Hey, Michael.
Well, so we're gonna hey there, Art, we're gonna talk about design and about purposeful design, about presentation, digital presentation, but also other kinds of presentations, sort of conceptual presentations. One of the things I want to make sure that we're really clear about at the very beginning that we have talked about already is that you and I are not designers.
No, nobody would
We
mistake us for designers.
That's right. We are much more on the engineer side than on the visual design side. And so, what I've done is I've had the blessing of working with a lot of good designers
Hmm.
who are able to make magic and respond to the needs of the systems that I wanted to put in place, as you have. And working with designers, I think we've both learned some things about what it is that designers do and how visual design interact with conceptual design as we are building products.
Hmm. Yes.
So among the rules that I feel like I've seen is that good design depends on bending existing patterns, not
Hmm.
establishing brand new patterns.
Right.
One of the aspects of our current state of affairs is that we are still in the baby step stage, so we don't necessarily have a pattern set, a visual vernacular that's as clear as our verbal vernacular, the language of a shared culture, and so we're in the process of developing this. And part of what good design is doing is taking currently things that we already know about
Hmm.
and bending them a little bit,
Hmm.
and so that's we're still in the very much of
Very much so.
the building phase.
Yeah, I think good design works with constraints, and the people that I've worked with sort of acknowledge those constraints, but it's the challenge to their design task, saying this is what we can do. And as you say, it's really about bending it. Find that creative way to change it around the edges, which leaves the large zone of familiarity and comfort for typical users.
Yep. Well, it's something that we'll explore as we move into usability, utilitarian design. So, talk a little bit about what elegant design is, as in earlier segments. I worked with one of the best book designers ever, and that was a wonderful thing. I've worked with lots of other designers who are sort of natural designers, and then learned how to apply some of these tools to the digital environment after learning some things in the print environment that were sort of the signatures of good design.
Okay, Michael, so we're going to pick up on purposeful design talking about usability. And usability is one of those aspects of design that can be measured, at least can be tested for. So when people do things like release websites, before they do it, they typically bring in a different class of engineers called usability engineers. And they're folks who will work with a website to see how well it supports the different goals that it has. So they may test how many paths there are to achieve a particular goal, where people get stuck on a website trying to uh, reach a particular goal. And they have a number of tools, as you know, that they bring in to that. They bring in tools to the design phase, uh, like wireframes. They'll do a lot of prototyping and beta releases, but there is an entire class of engineers focused on usability. And they're people like you and like me who don't have any design or artistic, so they're not leaders in this task, but they're able to work with design ideas which are developed and then show where the design realizes its purpose, where the design leaves some things short.
And this is mostly structural design as opposed to visual design, although visual cues can lead people in certain directions or in the wrong direction if it's done sort of wrong. Usability was coming into its sort of heyday about the time that we were rolling out a new version of the Active Skim on the NAP site. And that was something which was doing something which most users didn't even think they could be able to do, which is highlight the key phrases from a chapter, let them skim based on a key term. How do you represent something where you can click on a key term and have the paragraph show up right there in your screen? So we did a wireframe, which was really useful because a wireframe is mostly just a sketch of what the screen is going to look like. And the way that by watching the ways in which people were understanding this 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper in front of them and asking questions about it, it was clear. It became clearer all the time that certain things were confusing, certain things made sense automatically. But watching people's confusions and uncertainties is what a good structural design is designed to avoid, and usability is a good way of testing that. It has very little to do with the visual gracefulness of whatever we were talking about. It's much more about focusing on tasks and desired actions. What is it? And that's part of the measurement. Do they go to the sign-up page? Do they, or can they find the sign-up page? Can they get to the next step effectively?
Right. And usability testing is often involved with what's referred to as information architecture. Does the layout of the content make sense? Is navigation reasonable? Do you have clear guides to where you are and where you were and how to get around? So usability.
And where do people look for help? And,
right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So it's really about the mental model of the designers, and how well does that map to the mental model that typical users come through? How well does it match convention? And as you said early on, it's one of those things where you want to maybe bend the rules a little bit for creativity or in search of some other goal, but you don't want to completely destroy it. In the website that we looked at earlier this week, Websites That Suck, which has some entertaining content on it, the person who developed it has this thing he calls mystery meat navigation, which, great name, but it requires the user to sort of guess where navigation lives. And what the hell is a navigation element? That is completely ignoring any constraint, going beyond any prior experience. So that's something that you expect usability testing to pick up.
And usability, well, clearly they didn't use usability testing, but for an example of sort of the at least my example of the extreme version of the austere simplicity usability can end up resulting in is Craigslist, which is as simple as possible and all text-based and very few graphics. And it is a, speaking of scaffolding, it's a scaffolding for information, very purpose-driven, very goal-driven. I don't know whether they effectively used usability tests for that, but boy, that's the way it ended up being. Usability can also be a bludgeon used by people to insist on a particular kind of look and feel. It's one of those things that's worth knowing about as a publisher, so that you can also bicker with it a little bit, because usability can be too extreme. And part of what you're trying to do is make sure that there are aesthetics involved in design of whatever the product is. Absolutely. And that it is inviting, and that it is attractive, and that it is elegant. And that has very little to do with usability, and an awful lot to do with aesthetics. And so purposeful design has to be purposeful, yes, but it also needs to we need to be attentive to the far extreme of absolute usability, which is something that is quite anorexic.